It's very easy for engineering and technical folks to gravitate towards, wanting to go to the big shiny object, but we want to make sure it's kind of a tried and tested, and there's always a budget element to it too.
Hi, you're listening to The Secure Developer. It's part of the MyDevSecOps community, a platform for developers, operators, and security people to share their views and practices on DevSecOps, Dev and Sec collaboration, cloud security, and more. Check out mydevsecops.io to join the community and find other great resources. This podcast is sponsored by Snyk. Snyk is a dev-first security company helping companies fix vulnerabilities in open source components and containers without slowing down development. To learn more, visit snyk.io. On today's episode, Guy Podjarny, president and co-founder of Snyk, talks to Geoff Kershner. Geoff has worked in high tech in Silicon Valley since 1995. He started off his career with Sun Microsystems, moving on to eBay, PayPal, LiveOps, before joining a small company called AKF Partners, specializing in helping with high growth. He has had various roles in engineering, product, system operations, and IT, but has always gravitated back to security, as it's a fascinating and challenging space. He's now the Chief Security Officer at Medallia, the world's leading customer experience platform.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Secure Developer. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we have with us someone who has kind of done this journey from ops to security and now tackles a pretty sort of sizable amount of security as Chief Security Officer at Medallia. We have Geoff Kershner. Thanks for coming on to the show, Geoff.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Geoff, before we dig in, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what is it that you do, and what was the journey that you took into security and into specifically your current role?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I've been in high technology for about 25 years now. I came to the Bay Area in California in 1995 and started working at Sun Microsystems, and went to eBay and PayPal, and then a startup, and then a consulting firm, and now landed at Medallia as the Chief Security Officer. I've had various roles. I started in technology operations and gravitated in and out of security throughout my career. It's always been a fascinating area for me. Actually, at my last consulting company prior to joining Medallia, we focused on high growth and high scale companies and helped companies that were dealing with massive problems with just growing and scaling. And security always came up as a topic too. And I was the most experienced in our firm around security, so we decided to start a security practice there. I got engaged with Medallia as part of that, and I've been really excited to help them build a strong security program there.
So you got lured into the dark side. I don't know which one of them is the dark side, but you got lured into actually operating and running that from the consulting side. Has that been very different? I mean, how's the shift from consulting to running the team?
Well, the shift from obviously you have a bit more ownership when you're actually running the team, and you have, the day-to-day responsibilities of everything. It wasn't a hardship because everybody in our consulting firm was executives or leading large teams and stuff before in an operational capacity. So we weren't born consultants. But the biggest thing that I liked about Medallia when I came there is they had a security mindset from the beginning. It's not like we were introducing a new topic there. So that is something that I was actually looking forward to in a company. Somebody that took it seriously, understands how important it is to our customers, that privacy and security is an element that has to be an element of how you run the business.
Yeah. So it sounds like you came in to lead a team, but the mindset was there. Let's maybe veer indeed into the organization. So what does it mean? What does your organization look like, the Chief Security Officer organization, and maybe like what was the journey? You've been there for about 3 or 4 years. How did that change as you grew?
So when I joined the company, the security team had started. I think it was probably 2 or 3 years prior to that, where they had security people in the company, but they didn't really have a team until about 2 years prior to me joining. And it was really kind of just getting on its feet and developing. The way that I structured it is really, it's a pretty standard way to do it. So I have a risk and compliance department that's responsible for all our compliance programs. We have security operations in-house, so 24/7 security shop. And we have a large team that we call product or platform security that is responsible for all the aspects of SDLC, doing our penetration testing, to building and implementing tools that are integrated into our platform. My kind of philosophy on building a team around security is When you have a siloed security team, it doesn't work. When people look at you as an organization that makes all the rules and comes and sort of acts like a policing force or something like that, it has to be something that pervades the entire organization. But we also have a security engineering team that is responsible for building the security features that our customers use. So features around encryption, SSO, all that kind of stuff, they build and support. And they actually report, they're peers of mine that report in kind of dotted line into me and report into our CTO. But I think that's great that they have responsibility for acting like engineers. And to take it a step further, we also have what's called a security champions program. We put that in place a couple of years ago. We have folks in every single engineering organization, sometimes more than one person if it's a larger team. But these are people that we run through a program. We actually get them a Stanford credential around security. So it's pretty enticing to them because, security is interesting to a lot of people. We don't force anybody to do it. We get volunteers. And they like it. They like to have that on the resume. It's a pretty powerful thing. But this gives us an opportunity to not only have kind of go-to people that are thinking about security, but kind of a train the trainer approach. And that's how we really think about scaling the organization. So if there's a vulnerability in a certain part of the platform, we know we have somebody that we can go to. But also, it really helps them think about security from the very beginning when they're building their products.
I love the Champions program and the specific credential, maybe digging into that a little bit. So this is, you said there's like one or more champions per team. What does the team mean in this context? So like roughly, what would you say is the team,
a development team? Sorry to interrupt you. It's like a development team. So our teams, our engineering and development teams are aligned around our products. We have dozens of products on our platform, and we have engineering teams that are aligned towards those engineering and product teams. So if there's a team around reporting, a team around APIs, a team around mobile, a team around all those different things, each one of those will have a security champion or champions who we can work with and develop through this program.
So is it safe to say it's roughly like a 1-to-6, 1-to-10 type ratio of the champion to it, or even more?
Yes, depending on the team size. So, a team of 10 might have 1, a team of 20 might have 2, that kind of thing. And the other thing I like about it too is I don't think the right thing for any organization to do is to build a security empire either. I'm not about empire building. I'm about having a lean and very effective and efficient team, the best talent that I can find on my team that works on projects and works on those various things. But I want a team that is kind of train the trainer and having an approach of everybody thinking about security, not just my team.
For those people that are security champions, is it an acknowledged, beyond the credential, is it an acknowledged part of their job? Do they have another responsibility, some expectation that some percentage of their time would be spent on supporting the other developers in security work? How does it work on the CTO side?
It does. The expectation is that you'll have a certain percentage of time. Now, it varies by team. Typically, it's going to be anywhere from 10 to 20 on the low end to up to 30 to 40. In a lot of cases, though, some of the teams actually have a backlog or security work in their queue, so it can be more than that. But yeah, the expectations is a percentage of time through that program. Now, we typically do it for 6 months or a year and kind of refresh it. And sometimes people volunteer and they want to do it again, which is great. And sometimes people are just like, okay, now that I got that kind of training, I'll move on and somebody else will take the turn. So it kind of varies team by team.
Yeah, I think that's actually like an excellent idea. In part is because it keeps it fresh and these people always know more. But also, while you might have one champion on this 10-person team, over time, there might actually be 3 people out of those 10 that have been qualified and have kind of walked a mile in the security shoes, and both have the sort of the subject matter knowledge, but also the empathy for the security needs. Yeah.
My philosophy too is like security is going to fail at a company if it feels forced. You really have to have people understand and appreciate and own it. And that's why, we do a lot of top-down work around security. There has to be. I mean, you have to deliver results and manage risk and all that. But at the same time, if security is going to be successful at a company, I strongly believe that you have to get people to believe it and adopt it and make it, have the mindset where people are really thinking about it and want to do it. And we're fortunate in time that, especially in engineering teams, cybersecurity is a very, very hot item. So it definitely doesn't hurt to have some skill set on your resume surrounding that. It makes you very marketable.
Yeah.
Not that we want our people to be leaving and going somewhere else, but it's a very high in demand skill set.
It's true value, right? Because it's valuable for you in the company, and maybe unfortunately, it's valuable when someone tries to hire them out of your company. But in the meantime, it's a motivation for them to sign up. And I love that Security Champions program. Thinking about that lean team that you run, where you hire great people, what is it that you look for in a hire within your team?
We want people that have strong security backgrounds or have great technical kind of acumen too, or compliance kind of acumen and business acumen. So I think having for the more technical roles, like our security operations team and our product security team. And I forgot to mention, we also do our own internal red teaming. We have do our own kind of ethical hacking and stuff like that. So that's one of the functions that we do. But for those teams, I think it's important for them to have kind of a broad range and skill set, not necessarily expertise in one area or another, but having folks that can really, understand the technology stacks that we're working on and figure out how tools and systems and stuff can integrate with those. And I think a lot of the roles on the risk and compliance side is very customer facing. So we do a lot of work producing collateral around security. We talk to customers all the time. We have customers in the Fortune 50 in various different verticals, from banking to telcos to government to healthcare and stuff like that. So very highly regulated and security conscious customers. And my team talks to them often, and we have to convince them that our security is great. And for those folks, it's very important that they have sound business acumen, and they not only understand technology and compliance and security, but have the acumen to be able to talk about it to customers and explain our features and the value that we can add as a security team.
Got it. And I mean, this makes a lot of sense. And I think those are the engineers that help secure your own platform, and therefore they communicate with customers to help build trust that their data and trusting you is legitimate, that they're in safe hands. Separate from the engineering team that I think you mentioned reports to the CTO that builds specific security capabilities, some crypto capability or the other. Although I imagine that team reporting to you is also deeply understands what has been built there, so they can communicate that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're connected at the hip with those teams there. But just the fact that they're more engaged in the engineering process and the build and all that, it makes them kind of move at a different pace and have priorities. But they're very closely aligned with my team.
The different structure. And how
I do have a lot of influence over the product roadmap for our security team, as you would imagine.
And how important is it to you to have a hire into your team know how to code? Actually like script code. How significant is it? It is important for a couple of reasons. So a lot of the tools and services that we implement, we're also responsible for doing the deployment of those, deployment and support. On the other end too, I'll take our product security team as an example. They're the ones that work on our SDLC and manage our vulnerability programs. For them, we do our own testing. We also hire third parties to do a lot of our testing. It's very important for them to understand the code and understand the technology behind it, because we're the ones that, will triage and look at vulnerabilities. So if we're going to hand something off and find a vulnerability, whether it's through our own testing or through a third party, and hand it off to an engineering team, we don't want to, we want to understand the context and offer solutions to them. Hey, you should do it this way or this way. Here's a recommendation for you. If you don't have that kind of skill set on your security team, you're going to lose some trust with engineering teams and IT teams and everybody. You have to have that technical acumen to be able to work with those teams and work together with them on solutions. So I guess maybe indeed drilling into kind of that product security team work and shifting a bit into the engineering side. So you mentioned the Security Champions program. That's clearly one path of working with engineering.
Yep.
I imagine it's primarily the product security team. How do they work with the engineering work, for instance, around vulnerabilities, around tooling, and maybe even specifically around ownership? Who owns what aspect of the work there?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we think of ownership, I'll kind of start there and unpack it the other way. When we think of ownership, we want the system owners and people that are building the products, just like people building, supporting the server stacks and networks and all that, to own the security, like the same way that they own availability, the same way they own quality, the same way that they own the features. When you get that kind of ownership, if there's a hack or an intrusion on your product, I think, something that you built, I think it only makes sense that you would feel some ownership and responsibility that, you could have done something better. So with that regard, that's kind of the mindset that we want to think. Having said that, the way that our team interacts with them is very much from the very beginning. We follow an agile process. We go through planning cycles and all that. From the very, very beginning, our teams gets involved with designs, reviewing designs, doing threat analysis on designs. And when products are being developed, there's a whole process where the teams can create triggers and stuff that automatically sends a signal to engage our team, our security team, in reviewing, helping them at the kind of review stage of, before the product gets really deep into development. And then at the other various stages too, we work with the engineering teams to help integrate tools that will help them automate the process for doing things and finding vulnerabilities early on in the process, and giving them the tools that allows them to automate them, so that we don't have to we can find vulnerabilities early. They can or they can do it as they're building their products. So the ownership really lies. We own the tools, we own the design, they own the products, and where the two meet are through our SDLC process.
Interesting. So I think there's a lot to unravel around that design aspect of it. So you mentioned there's a bunch of keywords or sort of signals that trigger engaging the security team. Is that an automated process? Is it literally some keywords in an issue, or is it more guidelines?
It's semi-automated. So there's product standards that we create. And through those product standards, it requires engineers and developers and product folks to fill out information about what they're building. And based on how they answer things, is this a new service? Is this going to be a new type of data we're ingesting? Is it how we manage it? Something like that, that will trigger, this is going to require some security review. So there's some kind of like self-answer Q&A, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good at catching most things, and that triggers an engagement from our team. And that is a bit of a manual step, but that's how it's done today.
But it's if I echo this back, this tooling, this semi-automated process helps the development team know when to engage you and when they don't necessarily need to engage you, and therefore you reduce the number of times they do need to engage you to a smaller amount, which is manageable or allows you to scale.
Yes.
And that is important to bring in that security expertise.
Yeah, that's right. And the way it's a very collaborative process too, because like I said, we have this product security team that works on this too, but we also have the security engineering team that builds a lot of features and stuff. They'll often also get engaged in helping some of the if there's a big thing that's data science and stuff where you're doing that kind of work around there, that may require, okay, we really need to look at how we're designing the security around that. So it's a very collaborative effort. The thing that I really liked about how I wouldn't say I'm going to take all the credit for this, because we have a lot of wonderful people on the team. But when I got there, it was very much of an us versus them kind of organization. But it's really flipped. People come to us for help, which is great. People say, hey, we're building this thing. Hey, we're thinking about this new product. Hey, I don't know if this seems like, it might have some security issues. It's great that people are reaching out to us versus, oh my God, here comes a security team.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, I think that ability to collaborate and having the mutual love or mutual appreciation is really core for it. How is your product team structured towards the team? When you say they reach out to us, is there a partner, a designated product security person that is mapped to a bunch of development teams? Is it more of a pool?
Not really. As we're growing and scaling, we do have folks that have more expertise in one area versus the other. We have tons of different products on our service. We have, web intercepts, we have surveys, we have video, we have voice. There's Medallia, for context, basically is a company that does customer experience and creates. It basically pulls, I use the word signals again, but signals from surveys to when you go on a website and you're asked to answer some questions about this or that, that's often us, but there's video, there's voice, there's all these new facets for how our customers engage with their customers. And that's what we're trying to help. We're trying to help pull in and give them rich information about those sources. So there's lots of different technologies. We've actually acquired quite a few companies in the last 2 years. So, they come with their technology stacks and stuff like that. So it's kind of impossible for one person to understand everything. So we are getting a little bit more specialized in our services. But in general, like I said, it's a relatively small team. There's a way that they can reach out to the group, and then we meet regularly and triage and assign, say, this one's yours, this one's yours, and try to keep people around the areas where they're most comfortable and most knowledgeable.
Got it. And I think with the Security Champions program, you also have people that are right there to engage. So they might have their local kind of depth in the application, even if their security depth is not as deep, but it's substantial. And a bit of a topic of choice for me recently is really the whole world of cloud security. How do you think of product security versus cloud security? You think about cloud platforms, you think about containers. Are those under the purview of the same team? Is it separate team? How do you see that delineation?
It's actually interesting. So we've toyed and tinkered with different names for our organization, but cloud, it's very much that. We run our services in both our own co-located data centers and in some public cloud for certain aspects. Most of it is in our own co-located, but we're software as a service. So yes, we have to think of the cloud and think about containers and all that. So all that kind of security blends together with our team. So we have to think about how we're securing containers, how we're securing deployment. So we have the typical development engineering organization that I was talking about that builds all the features and functions, but we also have a cloud organization that manages all our data centers, SRE type functions. So, the DevOps, folks that are doing all the deployments and all that kind of stuff. We work very, very closely and hand in hand with those guys too. They're also big partners with us. And just like the development teams, we work with those. The Security Champions program doesn't always necessarily fit in, but they're very security conscious. They also come to us so often, and we go to them. We partner with them. We meet with them every week. And the same thing, when there's tools and stuff like that we need, we work with them to select them, to build them, to deploy them, all that stuff. It's a partnership.
And in this context, the we is the same product security team. So like within the security organization, it's the product security team that is the destination, or is there another team within the CISO team?
It's actually both. It's depending on what it is. It's a combination of the product security team and a security operations team. So our security operations team does far more than just managing alerts and all that. They're actually building and supporting a lot of our tools. They're so like the scanners and stuff that we use. The selection of those, the working with the cloud teams on deployment of those, all of those are between more the infrastructure components generally fall more on the security operations side.
Got it. And my favorite piece of technology that's in the twilight zone is containers. So who would you say has the responsibility right now to tackle container security? So secure the images. It's
a combination of my team, the security operations team, and working with the cloud organization, the SREs and the site reliability engineering team and the DevOps. Well, so between us, we're the ones that are responsible for the security of those.
Got it. And you've mentioned several times, owning the technologies or sort of giving the tools to help these other parts of the organization, build securely. Maybe let's dig into that a little bit. Like, what do you look for in a security tool, in a security technology? How do you approach an evaluation of a security tool?
That's a great question. So that's another thing that I've made sure that we've developed since we've been here. So when we're doing an evaluation of a tool or a platform or a service, we have a pretty thorough process that we go through. So first of all, my approach to that is we don't necessarily want to go and find the latest, greatest, snazziest thing that isn't really well tested and really good. We don't want to be the first users of most tools. It's very interesting and it's very easy for engineering and technical folks to gravitate towards, want to go to the big shiny object and stuff like that. But first of all, we want to make sure it's kind of a tried and tested, and there's always a budget element to it too. So we don't necessarily want the most expensive thing. But I think the more important things that we look for is how it's going to fit into our technology and our stack and our ability to support it. You may have two tools that have the same kind of features and capabilities, but if you don't have the skill set to manage it and work with it, then there's no point in having it. You got to go hire people to support it. So we look for something that will work across our technology stack. And like I said, it's getting a little bit more complex as where, we've acquired some companies, we're expanding globally. Mm-hmm. There's lots of introduction of new technology. So it's important to the degree possible that a tool has to be able to support all the different technologies. It has to be able to operate in our data centers and in a public cloud if it needs to. So you'd have to be able to build and deploy it in all those locations. And I think the integration like into our SIM and all that is important. How are we going to be able to run the tool, collect data, make sure we can manage it effectively, all these different elements. So we have a process and a criteria that we go through to say, how do we down select to a few? How do we run a proof of concept to decide? And the other important thing, like I said before, is if there's an element, whether it's an SDLC tool, something that we're going to integrate as part of the build and development process versus something that's going to run in our data centers, like, a scanner, container security, something like that, then we have to get the teams that are responsible for those involved as well. And that's why it's great, for example, to have the security champions program too. So, if we're selecting like, okay, we're going to do something new that does static or dynamic analysis. Let's get a few people from the engineering team and make that the security champion project we work on together and figure out how we can get them engaged. And that's also, like I said, not to give you your own little pitch for your own product, but our developers loved it, and that's important to us. Our developers love Sneak and found it very easy to use and all that. So that's great. Let's do something that they're happy to work with as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. First of all, always appreciate kind of a happy customer to it. But I just
really give you a little plug.
The approach of ensuring that the sort of the relevant stakeholder is indeed involved, and I especially like, I think, embedding the security champions, or once again raising the security champions program and how it plays a role here in being the obvious entity that can appreciate the security needs on one hand and the application on the other. So I think that's really quite wise. I feel like I can grill you on more and more of these questions, but I think we're running a little bit low on time. So I'll just kind of jump to my typical final question, which is,
you bet.
If you have one bit of advice or one tip or maybe even a pet peeve of something you want people to stop doing to give a team that is looking to level up their security foo, what would that be?
I'm going to give you a bit of a vague answer. I'm going to say it depends. I think you need to find out what the organization and what the group or the team thinks about security and adapt your answer towards that. And what I mean by that is if it's something that they're curious about or embrace or something like that, then it's great. Then you can figure out a way to kind of collaborate with. If they don't want to be thinking about security or have a bad experience, you need to convince them why it's important. And I think the biggest thing that's important, and that I've learned over the years of, working with many companies from consulting to prior to that, being in more operational roles, I think if you come in with a fixed approach to security, that's where you can fail. You have to understand where the organization is and what it needs and how they think about it. When I came into Medallia, I was actually consulting. Medallia was a client of mine for a while. And one of the things that I loved about it is top down at every level of the company, they believed that security was important. I didn't want to come into an organization as a CISO and say like, okay, we're just going to hire him and he's going to sort of take care of that problem. I wanted to feel that we believe that this is an important part of our journey as a company. And not every person completely had that mindset, but it was pretty darn close. And what I learned is you have to, be open, you have to listen to them, and you have to adapt your security messages based on the position that the leadership and the teams have.
Yeah, I love that. You have to sort of bring them along for the journey. You can't just sort of do it for them. They need to be true
That's right.
themselves as well.
That's right.
Geoff, this has been great. Thanks a lot for coming on, for sharing, so much sort of experience and wisdom here.
You bet. It was a pleasure, and I'm happy to do this again.
And thanks everybody for tuning in, and I hope you join us for the next one.
Thanks for listening to The Secure Developer. That's all we have time for today. For additional episodes and full transcriptions, visit mydevsecops.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved in the community, you can also find us on Twitter at mydevsecops. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes if you enjoyed today's episode. Bye for now.